What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Neurosketch with Dr. Ken. But if this is the first time you're seeing this channel, don't forget to subscribe. Today we're going to discuss about the otic ganglion, the smallest parasympathetic ganglion of the head. So this is the otic ganglion, and it's called otic because it's related to ear. So that it does not supply structures of the ear, but it is related to middle ear, and so it's called otic ganglion. But some literatures also suggest that it is called otic because this ganglion is well developed in organisms with long ears, for example, rabbits. And this is also why it is called otic ganglion. So otic ganglion is a parasympathetic ganglion, but as we mentioned before, that it is the smallest of the four parasympathetic ganglia of the head. So therefore, wow, what are the other ganglia of the head? These are the other parasympathetic ganglia of the head, and you have your ciliary ganglion, you have the pterygopattern ganglion, which is also called the sympathetic ganglion, and then you have your otic ganglion, which is the topic of discussion today, and also have the submandibular ganglion. So these parasympathetic ganglion have a lot of things in common, and we're going to see the general organization of this ganglia. What are the general organization of this ganglia? They are called the parasympathetic ganglia. Ganglia is plural of ganglion, so they are called the parasympathetic ganglia, but they have both sympathetic and the parasympathetic contribution. We generally have three contribution to this parasympathetic ganglion. Number one, we have the parasympathetic contribution, we have the sympathetic contribution, and also we have sensory contribution. But I've put this sign to suspend this ganglion from sensory fibers, because the sensory fibers, they are actually suspending this parasympathetic ganglion. The sensory fiber, they do not actually contribute to the function of this ganglion, but rather the physical attachment to the anatomical attachment, which is also called the topographical attachment of this ganglion. Okay, so generally these four parasympathetic ganglia of the head, they are suspended to the sensory branches of trigeminal nerve. These ganglia are suspended to the sensory branches of the trigeminal nerve, and they do not really contribute to the functionality of this ganglia, but rather the physicality, like physical connection, anatomical topographic connection, and that's gonna be your parasympathetic ganglia. Okay, so we have seen the major input to this ganglia. We have the sympathetic input and the parasympathetic input. What is the output? The output is going to be motor. What kind of motor? Is called the general visceral efferent, and this one is visceral because it's going to glands. It's going to glands and smooth muscles. What glands? The salivary glands and the sweat glands. So we have two kinds of output here. Motor output. We have the secretomotor, which is going to supply the glands, and also have the vasomotor, which is also going to supply the blood vessels of these glands and the skin around. So generally, the secretomotor is coming from the parasympathetic, and the vasomotor is coming from sympathetic, and they're all going through the ganglion. Okay, do you see the sensory output here? No, and this should also tell you that the sensor is just here physically to attach, to suspend the ganglia of the parasympathetic ganglia. So generally we've said the parasympathetic ganglia of the head, they are being suspended by the sensory branches of trigeminal nerves. Biggest question is why? Why are they suspended by the trigeminal nerve? Remember, the trigeminal nerve is the chief sensory supplier of the head. The bigger part of the head is receiving sensory innervation from trigeminal nerve, and so these parasympathetic ganglia, they are using this advantage. Like the trigeminal nerve is going to a lot of places within of the head. Okay, so they are being intentionally suspended by the sensory branches of trigeminal nerve to make sure that they are reaching into different places that want to supply the parasympathetic innervation. Does it make sense? Like, because the sensory because the trigeminal nerve is reaching a lot of places of the head, these ganglia, they are being suspended there intentionally so as to supply. Let me show you, for example. We've said we have ciliary ganglion. The ciliary ganglion is being suspended by V1, by branches of V1. So the ciliary ganglion, this is V1, being suspended by the branches of V1. We have pterygopattern ganglion here. The pterygopattern ganglion is being suspended by V2 here. And then we have your Otic ganglion, the topic of discussion today. The Otic ganglion is being suspended by V3. Remember, the branches of V3. Someone is saying V3 is motor. No. V3 is a mixed nerve. Okay, so it has got sensory and the motor fibers. Then the sensory fibers, they are suspending your Otic ganglion. We also have your submandibular ganglion downstairs here. And the submandibular ganglion, you can see it is also being suspended by the lingual nerve, and the lingual nerve is a sensory branch of V3. So we are concluding that these parasympathetic ganglia of the head are being suspended by the sensory branches of V3, and they are being suspended so to make sure they are reaching different places which can be reached by these sensory branches of trigeminal nerve, which is cranial nerve number 5. All right, so let's discuss about Otic ganglion, and I'm taking you back here again, and we've said we have three contributions, but 2 functional contributions. We have sympathetic and parasympathetic, and I want you to note that it is only parasympathetic that is going to make synapse within this ganglion. The only part of this parasympathetic ganglion that is going to synapse within the ganglion is going to be by parasympathetic. The sympathetic will not synapse within the ganglion, and sensory contribution will also not synapse within the ganglion. The only part that is going to synapse within the ganglion is going to be the parasympathetic, and this is worth noting. The sympathetic does not, because the sympathetic is already postganglionic and does not need to synapse, and the sensory has got its only has got their own ganglion that are going to synapse. Okay, let's talk about the surroundings of the Otic ganglion. What are the structures which are related to Otic ganglion? So we have, this is the Otic ganglion, and the Otic ganglion is found inferior medial to foramen ovale. So you have your foramen ovale, and the Otic ganglion is expected to be here. You have your foramen ovale here, and this is your Otic ganglion. The Otic ganglion is inferior medial to the foramen ovale, and because of that, what goes through foramen ovale is going to be V3, and so the Otic ganglion is medial to V3. It is medial to mandibular branch of trigeminal nerve, and that is also very important to remember. But the Otic ganglion, it is lateral. You can see it is lateral to this nerve, medial pterygoid nerve, and is also lateral to this tensor palatine muscle. The tensor palatine muscle is medial to Otic ganglion, and the Otic ganglion is lateral to this muscle. That's easy to remember. What is the relation between the Otic ganglion and the middle meningeal artery? The middle meningeal artery is posterior to the Otic ganglion. Let me show you here. This is going to be your middle meningeal artery, and this is your Otic ganglion. This is a medial view. Okay, so you can see the middle meningeal artery is behind the Otic ganglion, and the Otic ganglion is anterior to the middle meningeal artery. But we've seen this is V3, mandibular branch of trigeminal nerve, and we've said this Otic ganglion is on the medial surface, on the medial side of the mandibular branch of V3. So these are the other nerves of the V3, branches of V3. You see, you have your, this is the lingual nerve, and remember the coda tympan is going to join the lingual nerve to go to supply the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. And also remember, we have this is the nerve to medial pterygoid muscle, and this is a nerve that is going to the tensor palatine, and it's called the tensor palatine nerve here. And these are the branches of V3. Let me tell you something. We have said the parasympathetic ganglia of the head are being suspended by the sensory branches of trigeminal nerve. Now, Otic ganglion is being related to branches of V3. Otic ganglion is specifically related to the branches of V3, and you can see, because the Otic ganglion we've said is also suspended, it's been suspended by V3, and we've said V3 is both motor and sensory. It's a mixed nerve. But I want to show you another nerve here. This nerve is called the lesser petrosal nerve. It's a branch of the cranial nerve number 9, which is glossopharyngeal nerve. This is going to be your lesser petrosal. We're going to see it clearly. And we also have, this is the auriculotemporal nerve. You can see just got a slit through which between passes the middle meningeal artery. Like we have a slit between the two limbs of auriculotemporal nerve, and between the passes the middle meningeal artery. So let's remind ourselves about the trigeminal nerve. We have said cranial nerve number 5 is called trigeminal nerve, and it has got 3 branches. We have V1, V2, and V3. And because we have seen the Otic ganglion is related to the branches of V3, we forget about V1 and V2. Okay, and that's gonna be your Otic ganglion. And then you have cranial nerve number 7, which is called the facial nerve, and the facial nerve has got no significance in this Otic ganglion. I've just put here for orientation, like in between we have the facial nerve. And then we also have the cranial nerve number 9, which is called the glossopharyngeal nerve. And the glossopharyngeal nerve is coming all the way from this inferior salivatory nucleus, and it can you can always tell that it's going to supply the salivary glands. And so this is your facial nerve, as I've said, and the facial nerve is given a branch that is going to connect to the lingual nerve, and that branch is called the chorda tympani. And the chorda tympani, but we also have the inferior alveolar nerve, which is a branch of V3. What is a very, very important branch of V3 that we're going to discuss today? That's going to be your auriculotemporal nerve. You can never forget auriculotemporal nerve, especially for this discussion today. Please note that the Otic ganglion is related to the branches of V3, and this is why we are emphasizing here. But through cranial nerve number 9, which is called the glossopharyngeal nerve, the glossopharyngeal nerve is coming all the way from the inferior salivatory nucleus, because it's going to supply the salivary glands. And so we have a nerve from which is the branch of cranial nerve number 9, glossopharyngeal. This nerve is called the tympanic nerve, or it's called the nerve of Jacobson. Okay, it's the tympanic nerve, or the Jacobson's nerve, or nerve of Jacobson. This one. This nerve is going to form a tympanic plexus, and after tympanic plexus, we'll have a nerve which is called the lesser petrosal nerve, which is very, very important. And the lesser petrosal nerve is going to connect to the Otic ganglion. So the lesser petrosal nerve is actually carrying the preganglionic parasympathetic fiber to the Otic ganglion. Don't stress much about it. We're going to discuss it. You're going to understand it very, very much. And that's going to be your lesser petrosal nerve. Okay, so we have said each of these ganglion will have the sympathetic contribution, parasympathetic, and sensory contribution, which is actually suspending. I've already seen that sensory suspending here these are the branches of V3. Okay, so let's start with the parasympathetic contribution to the Otic ganglion. So the parasympathetic contribution is coming from the inferior salivatory nucleus and is carried by the way of cranial nerve number 9, which is called the glossopharyngeal nerve, but specifically through the Jacobson nerve. But what you mention in exam is lesser petrosal. What goes to the Otic ganglion is actually lesser petrosal after forming this tympanic plexus. Like lesser petrosal is the active contribution to the Otic ganglion. But we have divided the parasympathetic into two parts, the preganglionic and postganglionic. What ganglion are we referring? We are referring to the Otic ganglion. So anything that is coming that is before reaching this ganglion is called the preganglionic. So this is the preganglionic parasympathetic fiber. Where are they coming from? The inferior salivatory nucleus. Through which nerve? Glossopharyngeal nerve, Jacobson's nerve, tympanic plexus, and is brought here by the lesser petrosal nerve. So the lesser petrosal nerve is carrying preganglionic parasympathetic fibers that are going to the ganglion. And then from the ganglion, within the ganglion, there occurs a synapsis. The lesser petrosal nerve, it synapses within the Otic ganglion, and the synaptic, which is also called the postganglionic parasympathetic fiber. Now they are carried by the way of auriculotemporal nerve. So the preganglionic parasympathetic within the Otic ganglion are brought by the lesser petrosal nerve, but after synapse, the postganglionic fibers, they are carried by the way of auriculotemporal nerve, which is a sensory branch of V3, and is going to be brought to the parotid gland. You have inferior salivatory nucleus going to supply the parotid gland. That's going to be your parasympathetic contribution. What about sympathetic contribution? Remember, we sympathetic, we said it is thoracolumbar. There is no sympathetic within the head. So if you need sympathetic within the head, you need to bring it from the superior cervical region, which is from the cervical region, actually through the superior cervical ganglion. So all the sympathetic fiber that are coming to the head, they are coming from superior cervical ganglion, the superior cervical ganglion. And because this is a ganglion, these fibers that are coming from the superior cervical ganglion, they are already synapsed, and so they are postganglionic sympathetic fibers. So we do not have preganglionic sympathetic fiber that's coming to the otic ganglion. What we have is what has already been synapsed, and so we have the postganglionic sympathetic fibers. Now the postganglionic sympathetic fibers, they are brought to the head by the way of the external carotid artery, and from external carotid artery is going to go through the maxillary artery, which is the branch of external carotid artery, and then from maxillary artery these fibers are going to enter the middle meningeal artery, and from the middle meningeal artery they are going to the otic ganglion, and this is how the sympathetic is brought. What kind of fibers are carried here? They are postganglionic sympathetic, because we do not need the preganglionic, because they have already synapsed in the ganglia. So the sympathetic fibers, they do not synapse within the otic ganglion. They are going through and through. They are not synapsed within these ganglia, and that's going to be your sympathetic contribution to the otic ganglion. So this picture is just for simplicity. It does not show the other branches of the external carotid, maxillary artery, and also the middle meningeal artery, but it's actually going through the external carotid, maxillary artery, middle meningeal artery, and then it's going through the synapse. It's going to the otic ganglion. It does not synapse within the ganglion, and then from there it's carried by the same nerve, which is auriculotemporal nerve, and is going to supply the parotid gland in a similar fashion as the parasympathetic. That's gonna be your sensory root or sensory contribution, and we have said all the parasympathetic ganglia of the head have been suspended by the sensory branches of V3. So what is the sensory fiber? That is what is the nerve that is suspend this otic ganglion? That's gonna be your auriculotemporal nerve, and this is the fibers are derived here, and then so these sensory root, they do not synapse within the ganglion. Listen, because they are sensory, they are coming from peripheral nervous system to the central nervous system. They are coming from organs all the way to the sense organs, all the way to the central nervous system, or to the center. So these fibers are coming, they are passing through the otic ganglion. They do not synapse within the otic ganglion. They are going to find their own ganglion, which is called the trigeminal ganglion. So we have the semilunar valve, which is semilunar ganglion. The trigeminal ganglion is also called the semilunar ganglion, and these sensory fibers, they do not synapse within the otic ganglion. They are going to synapse within the semilunar ganglion. We have something strange, which is called the Frey syndrome, which is also called the gustatory sweating or the auriculotemporal syndrome. What is it? This is a condition which is characterized by sweating and flushing over the parotid region when you are eating. Listen, when you are eating, instead of secreting saliva, you are secreting sweat, and this is not relating to the temperature of the food you are taking. You might be taking completely cold soup and still you are sweating, and this is called the gustatory sweating or the Frey syndrome, which is also called the auriculotemporal syndrome. So why does it happen? Why do people sweat while they are eating? Listen, we said we have the postganglionic parasympathetic fiber that are carried by the way of auriculotemporal nerve to the parotid gland. The function of these nerve fibers is to increase secretion. The function of this parasympathetic is to increase salivary secretion here. So it happens that this fiber got injured, and while they are healing, while they are reconnecting back, instead of connecting back to the parotid gland, they're going to connect the sweaty glands and the blood vessels around that region. So what happens whenever you're thinking of food, whenever you're eating, you're thinking of food, instead of secreting saliva, you are secreting sweats, and so you are sweating while eating, and this is called the Frey syndrome or gustatory sweating. Gustatory means sense of taste. Whenever you feel something sweet or something, that would result into release of secretion of saliva, you are sweating, and it's called the gustatory sweating or auriculotemporal syndrome. This is very strange, and also it is very disturbing to people, because assume you're going to the wherever you're going to celebrate with your friends, and whenever you're thinking of food, like you're excited to eat, you are sweating, and everyone is you make everyone around amazed. Yeah, so that's called the Frey syndrome or gustatory sweating. So this sounds like pretty much it on the discussion of the Otic ganglion. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. We are going to discuss other ganglia, and we're going to have several discussions later, and see you soon.